I used to see things as like incredibly black and white. You need to like hit this mark so you can go to the next thing, to the next thing. It's always a work in progress. But like where I'm trying to continue to remind myself of is like life has many chapters. Today's chapter is going to be different than tomorrow's and yesterday's, but try to segment out those chapters, even if it's not as natural as like 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. But for Caroline Witmer's chapter today, that wasn't serving me. And we had to try to work to come up with what is it going to look like so that you can be fulfilled within your career, but also ensuring that you're being true to the other elements of yourself.
Welcome to Character. I'm Anne Benveniste. These are honest conversations with New Yorkers who inspire me about their journey to figuring out who they are and what they want to say and the role the city played in the process. My guest today is Caroline Witmer, co-founder of TuckShop, the handcrafted chocolate company that captures the spirit of your happy place. Caroline was actually a client of mine, so I've had a front row seat to her evolution, from a decade in finance to questioning what actually made her happy and ultimately stepping into something entirely her own. A classic high achiever, Caroline had checked every box and it was all working until it wasn't. In this episode, we explore the slow unraveling of that realization. This is an honest, vulnerable, and relatable story about ambition, intuition, reinvention, and what happens when you stop doing what's expected and start listening to yourself. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to chat. I think I always like to start at the beginning, which is like, what did you think you were going to be when you grow up?
I know. I was enjoying daydreaming or thinking back about that question.
Yeah.
I'd say, honestly, it was probably, which is sort of, you'll see as we discussed that there's sort of two sides to me, but I would say that was sort of like flavor of the month. So, you had the month of like the dream, soccer star, then there was the doctor. I feel like I'm a passionate person and it was just sort of whatever I was into at that moment.
Yeah.
And all of it was nothing, none of it came to fruition. The earliest was probably like my first year at college. I went to Brown University. I took an amazing neuro class and I like went back to my parents and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's see this through. Like, I think they probably knew that's probably not how it was going to end up, and it didn't. But I wasn't ever changing.
Ever changing. Okay. But you ended up in finance and you had basically the first 10 so years of your career, you were in finance and you did an MBA. So like, tell me like, how did that
happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's where I could be like, yeah, as a 5 and 6-year-old, I wasn't like, I'm going to be in finance. But I think that
some people are.
And I think that when I was reflecting on that, it was just sort of, I think I always sort of worked. I took to external praise. And so I did well in school. School came relatively easy to me. I was the captain of the sports team. I was elected representative. And so I early on in my life got that, well, this looks good. Let's try it on. All right, great. What's next? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of how I ended up in finance, to be honest. I went to prep school, then I went to Brown. I just assumed I would be studying economics. And then...
Wait, why?
And that really is because it's what my dad did. I think I've always kind of been like a daddy's little girl.
Yeah.
I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut. People were in and out of New York City in suits. That was just sort of what I thought work was, which is so closed-minded, but that's my truth.
Yeah. No, but I think that's really true for a lot of people, like thinking like, oh, because, while you're saying, oh, I was multi-passionate, I had all these different ideas, like as a kid, I think our imaginations are a lot freer.
Totally.
But then there's a certain point where we mature in some way and we get this concept of like, this is what work is. And so I think that's actually really important.
No, it's so true. And I think one of the things you helped me with is just sort of like the evolution and that like work doesn't have to be so serious, so black and white. Yeah. But that was certainly like my early idea of what work was, at least once I was high school to college, was like, oh, well, you need to get into a training program post-college at a bulge bracket bank or something of the like. And so that's what I pursued.
Okay. Because that was what your dad did. And you said something earlier. It was like, you were captain of this, you were president of that. And so it was always like, what's the done thing?
Sounds good. Like, what am I supposed to do next? What are people expecting out of me? I'm like, of course, Caroline's going to want to work at one of these banks. That's just sort of, and what's funny is I never had a perfect path to getting there. I've always been a people person. So I typically wouldn't get the initial internship, but would find a way in the back door. Yeah. And that's how I got my first job at JP Morgan. It was within wealth management, and it was wonderful for me at the time. But that's how I ended up there. And then once I was in there, I was like, all right, well, let's just stay on this hamster wheel. And one thing kind of led to the next in terms of my 10 years within finance.
Because when you say let's just stay on this hamster wheel, is that because you liked it, or you were like, this is the done thing?
I think that I don't know if I'm naive or if I wear like some sort of blinders, but like when I'm in something, I don't look up that much. Like I again, that's something that I've started to do because I had to stop myself and remind myself to look up. But when I was out of, the first couple of years out of college are actually pretty tough. I feel like if only there was like more infrastructure for kids then, because everything is new. I was working like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking about anything else. I was just clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
And I was doing cool things at work. I was working within wealth management, but I love like figuring out an ecosystem. And so now I was like, young girl dropped into the JP Morgan, very quickly recognized that I wanted to go work for this big executive and was able to find my way onto his team. And then I'm traveling to London and Milan and I'm doing cool things. I'm a part of cool projects. I'm in the room with people I wouldn't have ever expected to be in the room with. And so sure, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and like it's working. And then there was a natural inflection point where another thing is, I think, and I talked to my sister about this recently, where it's like grade school into high school into college, into that type of training program. And then in our family, there was always the idea of business school. Again, our dad went to business school, and it's sort of a natural way to, I think there's a lot of emphasis on education within my family, but also it's a way to take a pause. And in my case, I was like, oh, well, I'll use that pause to get to private markets. But we're used to these like chapters, like these embedded chapters.
Yeah.
And so I think I did 5 or 6 years at JP Morgan, but I knew like business school was next. It was like, I probably had a terrible answer as to why, but that was just what I was going to do next.
Yeah, you were checking the boxes. You're like, I'm captain of the sports team. I'm president of the school. I'm economics major. But it sounds like you were enjoying it.
I was enjoying it. It was a great ride, but like I wasn't like looking inside and journaling and being like, hey, are you happy? It was just like, we're doing this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. What's next? What's next? What's next?
Okay. So like, what was the like moment of like, fuck, wait, this isn't actually working? Or like, what was that? What prompted maybe looking up and around or inside even?
I guess we're racing through these 10 years quickly, which is fine. But I took a job. I ended up at Columbia Business School, and I actually worked my second year at Columbia. I took an awesome job where I was the second hire of really just an idea at the time to create a female-founded private investments firm where we're going to be seeding emerging managers. And I had a lot of respect for the woman who was founding this, and it was pretty surreal to be able to do that while also working.
Yeah, it
was like embedded insurance that I was going to be able to try out this gig for 9 months while also getting this degree. And then I ended up going there full time after graduation, but I loved that I could have that like dual working and school experience. So let's just say the hamster wheel kept going.
Yeah, you were still crushing.
2 to 3 years of working at that firm, I actually adored. Like I was learning a ton. I was working really hard. I like pour myself into what I do. I'm totally fueled by, at least more so then than now, but by external praise. I was getting that. I was good at the job. I wasn't looking up because nothing was really forcing me to look up. But then a couple things happened. COVID, for one, like 2020 occurred and everyone just had like a lot more time on their hands. I also got pregnant. My husband and I had gotten married a few years prior. So we were looking to start our family, and I got pregnant around the start of COVID. So all of a sudden there was just natural change in that I didn't have the energy of being in the office. I had a lot more time on my hands, and I was just thinking towards this next chapter of starting my family.
Yeah.
I don't think that really caused me to look up in full, but that was certainly like a point of change, that like a notch on the belt of like things were a little bit different.
Sure.
But the world started opening back. I guess I went back into the office after I had the baby. Like I took a standard, like I think 15-week maternity leave. And then I was back in the office and right back on that hamster wheel. And it was really a couple years later, maybe a year later, baby number 2. And like our life was just like a little bit out of control. No one was home. We were always working. And now we had like a precious daughter and another one on the way. And I think at that point, I had more time of just like self reflection. I actually remember going to a yoga class and coming home from that yoga class and just looking at my husband and being like, something's got to give. Like, I can't do this. And I listened to that voice, which was like the first time I had allowed myself to do something like that. And I called you. I had a friend who was working with you, and I shared like this feeling I'm having. And I think I'm lucky because I don't really like ignore. If I'm going to stop and listen to what's going, I'm not good at ignoring a feeling. And so that was like a bit all consuming, and we had to deal with that. And that's where me and you started working together, and one thing led to the next.
Sure. Okay. So you know, it was almost like a slow unfolding with COVID and kids and, you know, like little maybe glimmers of daylight in your reality. And then all of a sudden, I love it. You came back from yoga. So, you know, moving your body and connecting in a different way can open up channels.
Totally.
So you were like, okay, something has to change. And I think a lot of people get to that point where they're like, okay, I've done the thing, right? And I have the person I was no longer feels like the person I'm becoming. But this is where I think it gets really hard because it's like, what comes next?
Yeah, you're sort of like, I mean, I remember you saying to me, like, all right, you're on this bank of the river and we're going to get you across the river and it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable. And like right now you're still on this left bank. And so like, that's okay. You got some footing, but like you're about to have no footing for a while, but like eventually you'll feel that. And like, God, who knows where I am on that river right now? But like, I think I'm a little bit closer to the other side. But at the time, I think I was just like game for that journey. And whether that meant figuring out some boundaries or just reestablishing myself within that role, like that was an option. It's not like this was like, let's extract. But honestly, within like 1 or 2 sessions, I think we both were pretty aware that like this isn't necessarily the right fit for you right now. And I think that one thing I have tried to come back to, I used to, again, see things as like incredibly black and white. Like you need to like hit this mark so you can go to the next thing. And where I'm at now and where I've just, it's always a work in progress, but like where I'm trying to continue to remind myself of is like life has many chapters. Like today's chapter is going to be different than tomorrow's and yesterday's, but try to segment out those chapters, even if it's not as natural as like 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. But for Caroline Witmer's chapter today, that wasn't serving me. And we had to try to work to come up with what is it going to look like so that you can be fulfilled within your career, but also ensuring that you're being true to the other elements of yourself.
Yeah, totally. I think it's deeply uncomfortable.
But I think you allowed me to stop. And I mean, you asked like some simple questions at the beginning, like what are your what are your goalposts? And I was like, I got nothing. Like I think I was like giving 100% of myself to others.
Yeah.
So there were some pretty basic things that we needed to tend to before we could try to figure out what was coming next.
Yeah. And I think it's very normal to like that discomfort around the ambiguity of change, especially when you're in school and school has always been something that you're good at. And then you have the structure of also, if you go to one of these like kind of prestigious brand name organizations, there's often a lot of structure within the growth path within that space. And so you're in structure, and there's always a clear path forward. Mm-hmm. And I think I meet so many people in this space when they're like, this doesn't feel right anymore. And what's required is to let go of that structure. And like, that's what's so deeply uncomfortable,
totally.
I think, is learning to be okay with like the ambiguity and the unknown of like evolution and like almost trusting in the universe or your life to kind of, or your intuition to like guide you to that next chapter. So thank you for sharing that. I actually don't use that analogy as much anymore. And I'm glad.
The river one?
The river one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think about it often.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think were some of the like big things you had to let go of in this process or even adopt to kind of get to the place where you're like, I'm going to start a chocolate company?
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple like test runs between private investments, are really private equity, and then chocolate. So I can touch on some of that so it makes like a little bit more sense to people. But I mean, the biggest thing was just realizing that literally no one cares what you're doing except for yourself. I was like so caught up on that. Like, how was I, who has sort of just so been identified by my work and my schools and my accolades, going to now just be stripped of that, or in my mind, stripped of that, and have to present myself of someone who actually doesn't know what they're going to do next. That was like terrifying for me, like for myself. And I feel like you just have to kind of like practice introducing yourself and figuring out different ways of like framing that introduction where you can't like hang on this brand name of wherever you used to be associated. And it takes practice. And like, sure, maybe we're all still practicing it today, but you pretty quickly realize that like this is your one life, and this is like your life to live, and you really should do it for yourself and not for other people. But that took a lot of work for me. I'm like a classic middle child trying to please everyone, and I had to unwind some of that, and probably still am working. I mean, it's I think like a daily reminder for me, but I've definitely made strides. And so when I ended up leaving my old role, which was really tough for me, but it needed to happen. I did it without like a fully baked game plan, which again was tough for me, but I was about to have a second baby, and I think I just needed to get out of there before I felt like I was then pulled into a maternity leave and I owed them something. So I just kind of had to make that clean break.
Yeah.
And what I was doing with my time was I was meeting with, largely on Zoom, some in person, but I was meeting with female founders who were looking for capital. So I had helped my prior firm raise capital in order to like for a fund. I had a lot of experience both with high net individuals, family offices, and then institutional capital, and understood what it took in order to raise capital at a pretty large scale. And I have also always loved consumer product. And also just female founders in general. I think I always just thought like the idea of starting a business was so amazing. Never something I could do, but how cool to be able to spend time and to add my skill set to these women who were able to create such amazing things in businesses, but they didn't know how to access capital. And so I got like pulled into that pretty quickly. And it was funny because I stopped working at the firm. Then I was doing my own gig, and like the calendar was immediately filled. Like there is so many women who are in need of capital, and I was such a great source of connecting that I kind of was like, oh my gosh, like at that point I had like an 8-week-old baby, my calendar's full, and I kept finding myself like taking the calls, talking through it, but then not signing contracts, like not actually committing to get paid for the work that they so desperately wanted me to help them with. And I actually give my mom a lot of credit because I was trying to like create this perfect business plan. And this too was like a sexy, cool thing to be doing, like venture, capital raising, female founders. It looked so good. The story was going to be so easy to continue on in this direction. And so I had done it for like on and off for about like six to 9 months, but I wasn't satisfied, and I kept trying to like tweak it and make it perfect. And I was with my mom, and she was listening to me like wax on, and she's also like, you have like a tiny baby, like take a breather. But I had also been inspired by these founders, and I have a really good friend. She's now my business partner, Sarah, who always would be like throwing ideas at me. And even when we were meeting, I'd be like, well, yeah, I could either go do this in investing, I could do this in capital raising, or like my friend Sarah just told me about this crazy idea, but like we don't even need to bother talking about it because like I'll never be a founder, or I'm never gonna have a business. Like I think it always seems too light for me, or it wasn't enough to like continue on the story of what I thought my career was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And my mom looked at me, we were on a walk, and she was just like, you need to stop. You need to put everything else aside. You need to give yourself, I don't know if it's 1 month, 3 months, go do that. Like, go look into this chocolate business with Sarah that you light up when you talk about it. And she really said, go build something with your hands, but just take it down a notch and let's talk after that. And she's direct, and like I love her. We're so close, and like when she talks, she doesn't like overly share advice like that or get in the way of my decisions, to be honest. And so I was like, I should listen. Like I'm kind of being my own problem right now. And so I kept doing the consulting on the side with these founders, but I think that allowed me. It wasn't my next job. It was just like, I'm in this safe, like postpartum zone where I'm allowed to explore this project. And it was like the safety I needed in order to start something. And honestly, here I am 2 years later with like a business that's been growing year over year. And so I think it was just everything I had learned with you, the work I had done with myself, and just having a little bit of grace to leg into something that like allowed me to like look into starting my own business, and chocolate is what it was. So that's how TuckShop like initially started.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think giving yourself permission and not putting pressure on it to be the thing, but almost making it be playful, I think is so important, because when you put so much pressure on it to be the thing or go all in, there's just too much focused energy on it that you can get anxiety around it.
Totally.
If you're just doing it for the fun of it and you see how it evolves. I mean, when I started my coaching practice, I did it just because I wanted to coach people.
Yeah.
I just did it on the side. I wasn't sure that was going to be the thing. And so that allowed me to create something. I think it's like that for so many people.
It's totally right. And that's where I really give so much credit to my co-founder, Sarah, too. Like just the balance. If this was just like me or Caroline and Caroline clones doing this, it would have been strangled to death, because we would have taken it too seriously in the beginning and had such aspirational goals. You never would be where you are today. But I think that just sort of legging into something, recognizing that it can start small and organically grow, or the path is long, was so helpful to allowing me to give myself space in order to start this with Sarah. And honestly, it's something that I reflect on like week to week. It's critical when you're starting a business to hold everything a little bit looser than I used to.
Yeah, I think it's so often people have ideas, they're talking to me about them, but they're like, oh, but it would never work, or, what if I don't make enough money, or what if it fails? And it's because they're putting so much pressure on it. And if you can find, I think I did a podcast about this around like mitigating failure, or mitigating risk. But yeah, if you can just find a low stakes way to play and do it on the side for fun, and then you can test it out and see how it goes.
And so that's been the name of the game. It's kind of ironic. I helped a lot of women raise capital, and we bootstrapped this. I was like, I saw what that looks like. That's not actually like what I want to do. I want this to be like slow organic growth. We're both in a phase of our lives where we have children. We are in and out of having babies. I just had a baby. She's pregnant now. I was like, let's not suffocate this, but let's actually do everything really, really well. Let's see if we can be cash flow positive and roll that back into the business and, take on a little bit more risk each year. And because we've had that like slow organic growth to this, I think we're like laying the foundation for a business that really could be something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been cool to see all the growth that you've had and cool things that you've done. I mean, you launched TuckShop 2 years ago, and since then you've released a variety of product lines and done some collaborations with the Peninsula in LA and my own bakery here in New York. But maybe you could tell us a bit about the founding story of TuckShop and kind of how that idea came to fruition.
Well, I mean, I think it's funny, me coming from like the lovely throne that is finance, private equity, like thinking all things, to then all of a sudden be like, well, of course it's going to be easy to like start a consumer product. Like it's just a little chocolate business. That was the playful idea in the start. And I can explain why we started a chocolate business, but it's a lot harder than it looks. Operations, like just you're in charge of every single element of the business, and you are trying to create something honestly out of like thin air. And we care a ton about quality. The brand, we're working hard to build a brand. We're working hard to have a wonderful product that is enjoyed by others. There's the distribution channels. There's just so much you're balancing at once, and there's absolutely nothing you can fall back on. Like each decision is ultimately coming to you and your small team to be nimble and resourceful and efficient with every single dollar that goes into the business, but also have a large impact. So it's been tricky. I'd say for me, the hardest part has just been like learning operations. It's something I had never done. I mean, sure, I have an MBA, but like you can do so much in the classroom. It's a lot different when you're actually trying to do it yourself. Yeah. But we're figuring it out as we go. I think that I should touch. So Sarah and I are friends from high school. So we go way back. We actually went to prep school together to Deerfield, and we have a wonderful working relationship in many ways. And I think it's kind of funny. We used to do all of our, we used to sit, there's a lot of homework at prep school, and we used to do all of our work in the same room. So we kind of know how to be friends and put it aside to do work. And that's definitely rung true in this working relationship as well. We both also, our family spent a lot of time on Nantucket, and there was a small chocolate shop on Nantucket that was beloved and had been around forever that actually closed in 2019, 2020. And so one of the playful ideas that I have had with my dad loves sweets. He grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He's always kind of loved like the small family business, especially within the food space. When that couple closed Sweet Inspirations, we toyed around, well, look, maybe one day we should buy that and see if we could put in another operator within there, because it would be such a loss to the island to lose the sweet shops. And Sarah's like an absolute chocoholic, so she was all over this concept. And ultimately, we didn't end up buying that business, but that is really what gave the idea of like, well, what if we could create in our own brand, like a beautiful high-end chocolate that's like going to be product number one, which is really like a giftable product that we can do in a way that captivates people's favorite places, favorite moments, with the whole brand ethos is like to indulge and to savor a moment and to celebrate. And so that's really what TuckShop is about. It started on Nantucket, and since then we've been able to move into other markets. So we're in New York, LA. We've got a winter toile, which has helped with a lot of ski towns. Palm Beach is in the works. And then we've also been able to collaborate a number of amazing brands across retail, hospitality, and beyond. And what differentiates TuckShop is that there's customizable elements, but also really the distribution channels. So like the goal for TuckShop really is to be corporate gifting and hotels, I think, are like the large channels, but we are also excited to do a bigger push into wholesale. And we like that it's chocolate because we both love chocolate, and we think that chocolate is something that can be loved by all, but also differentiated in quality. But also it lends itself to like any occasion. And so like we think about our addressable market as like endless, because as long as we can like nail the branding and the packaging and make this product feel like uniquely yours, chocolate is a wonderful vehicle for that.
Totally. Your branding is so great. And I love all the collabs you've done and the way that you're able to customize the branding to the collaboration. It's really sweet. And we'll include links and everything for people to check it out themselves. So yeah, you're obviously doing, so much, and there's so much in there. It's such a good story, and you have great goals. And I'm wondering, in the past 2 years, what's been the most challenging part? And then you've answered
I can answer another thing for that too.
Yeah, because I'm interested in your answer. You're like learning operations, and I'm interested in like how you've learned, how you taught yourself operations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I remember one thing you would ask me when we were working together is like, what doesn't feel easy? Like, what do you what type of stuff within your job, within your life, are you procrastinating?
Yeah.
And like, think about that, because there's a reason that that's not the type of work that you want to do.
Yes.
And in my old roles, I was able to escape that type of work because someone else from the team could pick it up. And that's been one of the hardest parts about being a founder on a small team, is that there's no one to like push that type of work from to. So I would say like administrative work is like super tricky for me. I've like long been an ADHD person. I'm now no longer medicated, but like I have to figure out like little mechanisms in order to get that type of tough admin work done.
Yeah.
And it's just me in that list. So that's been one of the hardest parts, in addition to the operations.
So I think, okay, so you're building this thing, I think we've got a nice picture of your journey. And one of the things I'm really into at the moment is this idea that some form of spirituality or belief system is really part of a healthy diet for the human experience. Because as we discussed earlier, when you are navigating that uncertainty and when you feel super untethered, you need something to ground, something that closes the gap between the known and the unknown, that keeps you in a high vibrational frequency, keeps you trusting, believing, hopeful, all of that. And this is why spirituality in any form, choose your own adventure. It could be very humanist. It could be very God-focused or universe-focused. It doesn't matter. But I think having some sort of belief system structure that guides you in uncertainty is essential. And I'm not sure how you're going to answer this question, but like, do you have... What's your version?
What do I do?
What's your version of like keeping yourself grounded in the midst of uncertainty?
I mean, it's hard, and I think it's a daily practice. It should be daily. I mean, maybe it's weekly. I think I don't want to, I get overwhelmed like all the time. I think about, should I return to corporate all the time? Truly. My husband probably has to remind me once a month that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and that this is making sense. And he's right. He is right in this moment. And the other thing is that this is right now, and you can always make a change later. But right now, this is what's right. So I think when my mind starts going like that, I will do a couple of things. I guess for me, this is like my spiritual practice today.
Yeah.
But there's probably more to come, or more that I could be doing. I like write journal. I guess I journal, but it's in my phone, so probably would be better with pen and paper. But it's a start just to like get my thoughts down there. Thoughts down. It doesn't even matter if I'm rereading them. I just like have to get it out. So that will be the first thing I need to do. And then the second thing is move. So I will just go on a walk, go to the West Side Highway, get some good music, and just like, there doesn't need to be like, don't limit yourself to a finite amount of time. It could be like 2 hours, like whatever you need to just like unplug in that moment, or go on a run, do a class. So definitely like moving my body and just getting the millions of thoughts out of my mind. Those are like the two things that happen all the time, 5 days a week. That's critical in order for me to be like the best person that I am. I have like 3 little kids right now. They're 4, 2, and 2 months, or 4, 2.5, and 2 months. And so just like the overstimulation that is occurring in my world today is like insane. And I think that it is critical for me to do those things for myself, to just sort of take a moment so that I can show up and like be the best version of myself, like as cliche as it is. But like for me, for my partner, for my business, for my kids, it's pretty ugly if you don't take a moment and do what you need to do first.
Yeah, well, I think this is really important because I think it's impressive you're like building this business and you have these like 3 kids, 4 and under.
Yeah.
So how do you find balancing motherhood with that? I mean, this is obviously part of your routine. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would want to share with other mothers, maybe thinking about starting their own business or navigating this?
I think it goes back to like, again, like this is a chapter. It's an amazing, like one of the most, it's the most fulfilling chapter I've had thus far, but it's also like excruciatingly hard. You just give so much of yourself to others and they are delicious and delightful, but there's only so many hours in the day. And I think my advice, it really goes back to like what my mom said to me, where she was just like, take a break and like lean into what's making you feel good right now. And that's what allowed me to explore the concept of forming a business, and we've gotten to what TuckShop is today. And I very much think about, and Sarah and I are on the same page here, like we're laying brick right now. We're building the foundation of a business, and in 1 to 2 years, we're both going to look up and our kids are going to be a little bit older. And how happy are we going to be that there's already an amazing foundation to something that we could potentially grow and grow and grow. And I think just making sure that you're sort of on the same page as who you're working with, and recognizing that like this is your time for growth. This might not be your time for growth, but you know, just have grace with yourself that there's a lot going on in this chapter, and there's only so many hours in the day. But as long as you like just keep swimming, just keep working at it, like give a certain amount of time each day, or today is a kid's day, or this half of the day is a kid's day, and then you're gonna be able to work, be intentional with your time, and just keep on keeping on. You're gonna get a lot more done than you think you might have been able to achieve.
I love that. And I think just coupling that with like making sure that you're actually like making time for yourself to recharge. I think that can be easily forgotten.
Yeah. It's funny because I used to think that work was like you put on like your power suit and you go to your desk from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and maybe you grab Sweet Green for lunch, but like that is what I thought work was. And my friends from my kids' preschools, some of them still tease me that like I would never think to get coffee during 3 p.m. at 3. I would never think to meet one of them at 3 p.m. because like I'm working then. Even when I now have my own business, which the biggest luxury is that I have control of my time. And so I've been teased, but it's something I'm continuing to work on, that you can create your own day. You can be just as effective from like 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and like getting your work done so that you could be at your kids' family visit day at school. I mean, you just might kind of have to be like a magician with creating your days, but like some of those days are so insanely beautiful when you can wear like 10 different of your own identities within one day. And I'm like an active person who I love that. And it's one of the reasons why I love New York too, because even going to my kids' preschool, I can't tell you how many other women I've met who also have like these portfolio careers of sorts, or who are dipping their hands in and out of building businesses, raising families, nonprofit work, whatever it might be, but like their lives are so filled.
Yeah, I love that, the idea of wearing many hats. And I mean, you touched on New York, and obviously this is a podcast about New Yorkers. Yeah. So I'm wondering, you know, how do you think New York has shaped your journey? What do you think its greatest lesson has been for you so far? I mean, it's a very people are always creating stuff here, and I think New York stimulates people in different ways. So
Totally.
how has it stimulated you?
I mean, there's just so many people, everyone's living their lives in their own unique way. And what that does is just like that differentiated approach allows you to find your differentiated approach, but you're doing it amongst others. So it's not like a black and white way of doing things. You just have to sort of recognize that like, that's their story. They're doing it that way, but there's a little bit of everything, which I think has allowed me to sort of not care what other people are thinking and just do things the way I want to do. I don't know if I articulated it. I can try it again.
That was great. I think what I heard here is that when you actually, sometimes you can get stuck in your hamster wheel or your version of reality, but New York is a place of individuals, right?
Totally.
And when you look up and you look around, it's really easy to find people who are living their lives on their own terms, which is why I'm interviewing New Yorkers for this podcast, right? And there's therefore so many role models of people doing it their own way.
And I 100% am a people person. I find energy from other people. I love hearing what other people are doing, and there's just like no end to that in this city. And I love that like it could be like you might be so unassuming of someone. You might think you have no clue what they're doing. And then you hear this insane business that they've got going on that they're finding time to do in between all else that they're doing. And it's just amazing. I love that about this city. I also think that for TuckShop, I mean, there's just like an endless world of collaboration and partnership that can occur. Like Sarah and I probably get to talk to 1 to 2 amazing brands each week about working together, whether it be like in event form, creating like a gifting opportunity, or if we want to create a product together. There's just like no end. And it's because there's so many people, everyone's doing something. And I totally feed off of that energy.
Yeah, I love that. It's inspiring.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. Now, looking back on all of this, like what advice would you give your younger self?
This one is tough. I think because I honestly, I think you gotta live through some of those uncomfortable times in order to figure yourself out. So it's not like I would say to myself, well, you shouldn't have just like gone on that hamster wheel and done it. Like I actually am happy that I did everything that I've done. Yeah. Because I think that by working in that industry, I learned to work hard. I learned that results matter, like to be proud of the work that I put forward, how to interact with people, senior people, all types of people, how to collaborate. So I wouldn't change any of that. But I think the advice I would give myself is to just hold it all a little bit looser. There's not just one perfect outcome. Maybe option A didn't work out, but like option B, C, D, they might be better than option A. You just haven't even allowed yourself to look at them yet. And I think that just this idea to just be a little bit lighter in your shoes, hold everything a little bit looser, it's going to be okay. And just keep on. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you're eventually going to find that bank. To go back to your analogy, that other side of the river is something that I took myself too seriously, and I'm glad that got me to where it got me. But I feel like it was stressful, and it didn't necessarily need to always be so stressful.
Yeah, I really like that answer because I think I've also been in this place, certainly in my own work. I think I've released a fair amount of content where especially around my MBA, I've been very critical of my decision to do that. And, these days I am much less critical about that. I see it very much as like a necessary, like, do I think I went about the process in like the most intentional way? No, definitely for 100% not. But like, do I think that was a necessary part of my own evolution and journey? Absolutely, I do.
Similar. Even within the MBA, I have similar feelings there. Yeah. Well, it's like an interesting time within higher education and the workforce and all the things. Yeah. But I think that I agree with you. Like, was it so necessary? Well, it would be unfair for me to say no, because perhaps I didn't like totally figure out operations, but it allowed me like some sort of pause, that some reflection occurred. It's all building blocks. Totally. And I think for me, like doing the MBA for me, it helped me figure out who I wasn't in a very big way. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I would be doing this today if I hadn't had like such the strong negative reaction that I had going through that program and in the roles that I had afterwards. And so really seeing like all of the gifts in the hardships, I think is really a key story in kind of getting yourself into being like
in a comfortable vibration in the present. Because if you're looking back and you're regretting and why didn't I do this and I should have done it sooner, or I should have done it this way, you're going to be in a low vibration in the present, right? So really understanding that like everything we go through is something that we need to go through to grow ourselves, to understand ourselves better. And hey, maybe you spent 5 years longer doing something and in hindsight you wish you hadn't, but you probably needed those 5 years to get to the point where you were sick and tired of it, and have that grace and forgiveness with yourself. And so I really love your answer as like it's not to regret anything, but definitely holding things looser and being lighter, that there's a trust in holding things looser. And I think that comes to almost a spiritual belief, right? It's this like trusting that things will work out even if you're not really sure how it's going to come together.
I'm working. I mean, I have to work on that all the time. I have to remind myself of that. But I think it's sort of the only way you can be if you want to have like a multidimensional, fulfilling life. Otherwise, it's just head down, one foot in front of the other. Like you'll get it done. You might be getting things done a little bit quicker, but you're missing out on a lot of other things that are happening around you. Yeah,
or if your head is down and you're getting stuff done really quickly, is that actually the most like aligned path?
Totally.
Right? You might just be executing on something that you think you should do.
Yeah.
Right. And when you hold things looser, you're opened up to more of the magic of life, right? And the almost unexpected, like just with TuckShop, right? It was this. It wasn't this. Didn't make sense. And I think, right now I'm doing a whole thing on tarot, which is like so left field for me. You've seen it on my Insta. Like
totally.
And it doesn't really make sense. And it's never something I ever would have thought that I would be talking about or focusing on. But actually going there and giving myself permission to do this thing that, like, frankly, my father would be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
My father, the scientist,
the
molecular biologist. He'd be like, what are you doing? But doing that has almost given me more inspiration and creative ideas that I'm going over there and playing in that space has given me all of this, ideas to bring back into my current space. And so it's like allowed my own evolution to evolve in a way I wouldn't have thought possible.
No, I love that. I mean, I think it's funny. My mom's very creative. My dad's way more analytical. And it was always like a joke in our family that how could my mom, who was such a creative, she worked in the art industry, have no creative children? And like TuckShop's actually allowed me to see that I actually am quite creative. I just never gave that part of me any space. And I think it's important. It's important, like, even if it's not going to be a full career switch, it's just going to be like, I'm just going to dabble over here. You sort of like find out new parts of yourself that will serve you in the other elements. And so it's important to play around, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love that you're giving yourself space for the creative part of you to come out. And I honestly think so much of my work, I think is almost helping people give themselves space for the more creative part of them to come out. Because creativity, like I define that in like the broadest sense of the word. To me, creativity is like just like your individual authentic self-expression, and everyone's version of creativity is different, but creativity really manifests when you give yourself permission to fall off the path, right? When you stop conforming to the hamster wheel, and there's nothing wrong with the hamster wheel, there's nothing wrong with the path, but there's always a part of you that you're giving up to have the structure and the security of the path. And so when you allow yourself to fall off the path, you discover and open up to parts of yourself that didn't exist before. And you find within yourself this like it's very human. I think it's almost a very raw human experience because you're charting your own course from your own ideas. And I think it's,
self-actualizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is exactly
I think there's like an element of self-actualizing, which was, did we ever talk about like the Bowen theory?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, do you know what the Bowen theory is? Well, basically, it's like the study of family dynamics.
Okay.
And it's like the philosophy that like these triangles exist between different relationships, and it passes through generation. And you can kind of like study how people are the way they are based of different triangles within a family tree. But certain people, based off of like where they fall, will either like self-actualize a lot or self-actualize a little. And this is something I took a course on, I don't know, probably around the time where I was figuring it all out. And you kind of can get like scored with your self-actualization number. And I like hated to believe it, but I realized that like mine was really low. Like compared to my siblings, mine was probably the lowest because I had fallen the most in line to please everyone else. And I think that kind of woke me up a little bit. Like, I'm used to like scoring high on things. I was like, I have to be honest with myself. Like, this is probably pretty true. And I think that was like another thing where I was like, you got to live for yourself. You gotta be comfortable figuring out what actually is going to like get you excited, because you can't just keep doing everything for everyone else. But I think that creativity, wandering from the path you thought you might be on, all of these things help you. It doesn't have to be a full makeover, but self-actualize and figure out like what you actually care about.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Would you put a message on a billboard in Times Square? Is that an intense question, or do you like that question?
I mean, no, I think it's fine. Honestly, mine's playful. I think that I would just keep swimming. Honestly, I think that don't overthink everything. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Stop, pause, reflect, but just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and good things will come as long as you're listening to yourself while you do that.
Yes. Beautiful. I agree. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. So fun.
I love talking about it. And yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah. Thank you, Caroline. Thanks for tuning into Character. I hope these stories inspire you to trust yourself, bet on yourself, and do the work where needed. You are the artist of your life. Go create something unique and awesome. Don't forget to subscribe to the Character Substack. The link is in the show notes. Here you'll get photos of each guest in their creative space, alongside their New York City recommendations. I also share my analysis as a coach on why each guest is so aligned and thriving. And if you're enjoying the show, follow or leave a review. It helps other people like you find and get value from the podcast too. The music on this podcast was arranged by the New York-based artist, DJ, producer, and underground legend Michael Magnan.